Hi there. This is Kick the Acorn, and this is a review of chapters 16 through 18 of APUS history. So this is not how the exam is split because it is in units, but this is the 1877 to 1911 time period. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for APUS history. It could just be for honors US history, but it's what this is intended for. But anyways, this is going to be about the development of the West and immigration and then industrialization and its effects. So we have, okay, note, these are based on class notes, and well, this does not apply to you, so never mind about that. So chapter 16, this is the first part, and this is on Western development. So what government actions helped lead to Western development? If that was something that you were asked, these are some things that you could use for that. So there was the Homestead Act, and what that did was people were given land if they could improve it. So that's going to make a lot of people go to the West. Then the Pacific Railway Act helped make the Transcontinental Railroad, and once that railroad was made, more people would go to the West and develop it. Texas annexation and the Mexican cession, these were land possessions from the United States that brought the West together. Then there was the Indian Removal Act, which removed an obstacle of Native Americans because Native Americans were an obstacle to Western development, but once the unfortunate act was made, the results were that more advancement could be made to the West because they were put into reservations. If you needed to know some technologies that help transform the West, so basically these slides are just, as you're going to see, are just the title that is highlighted in white, maybe questions that you'll see, and then here's some things you can back it up with. So railroads, telegraph, train, barbed wire, refrigerated cars, machines, guns, and dynamite, all of those things, some of them were found from resources that they could find in the West that helped create industries there. Or maybe they were things that were already found in the East, but they were helped people get to the West. Economic activities in the West. So there could be ranching. There was a lot of cattle out there, and some farms that could be made in the plains. Commercial farming, and then there was cattle drives. This is when cattle was brought to Illinois, Chicago specifically, for meat production. Some useful natural resources would be copper, steel, coal, cattle. You might not consider that a natural resource, but in some cases it may be, and then gold. So these were all things that caused people to move there, and once these were found, they caused boom towns. And when maybe they ran out, then they were ghost towns because all the people left. So ethnic parts of the West. So not only were there industrial and economic developments, there were cultural and social developments. There was a lot of different kinds of people here, and they created melting pot typically describes the East when immigration comes in, but not really a melting pot in this case. But so basically the Chinese, they were not there originally. They came to escape the famine in China, and they knew about the gold that there was. Exodusters, these were freedmen, in other words, maybe men and women who used to be slaves, and they needed to escape the cruel South because there was a lot of new things there and restrictions and a lot of racism too. So they had to move west to escape that, and it wasn't as bad in the west. And then there was the white population that they just moved west for opportunity. And then Mexicans and Native Americans, I put them separate because in many cases they were already there. Mexicans were already there, and from the Mexican cession and Texas annexation, all that stuff that happened in the earlier 1800s, there wasn't a lot of like information spread. So some of those people might have not even known that they were now not even in Mexico anymore because it changed, or maybe they just didn't want to move because they said that's my land and it doesn't matter. And then Native Americans, well, as we know, they were already there before any Europeans came at all. Native American conflict. So it didn't just come easy for the Eastern Americans to come in and advance to the West. And remember, they were not viewed as citizens, so they just thought, oh, this is just a foreign sort of power and we need to remove it, even though technically there were some treaties, but they were broken. And here's ways that it was dealt with. So the Indian Removal Act, they were ordered to be put in reservations, and there was the Trail of Tears, as we know. And then Battle of Little Bighorn. This was when General Custer came in to a more defiant Native American group, which was Sioux, with Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, and he was defeated. So that was a Native American victory, but it still was something that dealt with them. And then, like I said, there was reservation systems, and there was also, I forgot to put it on here, the Wounded Knee battle or siege, whatever you call it. That is what some consider to have ended Native American conflicts because it was a Native American defeat. But there was also assimilation, which made Native Americans be like the white American population. And there was also the Carlisle schools for kids, and there was even a system where they would give Native Americans land as long as they changed their ways and got rid of their culture, which that was unpopular. But what was the result? Native American cultural diminishment. So either Native Americans were just kind of put somewhere else where they didn't want to be, or they just ended up losing their culture, some of them. Here are some Native American leaders that there were in this time. Geronimo was a Pache leader. Chief Joseph was a Nez Perce leader who went to he tried to escape to Canada, but he went a weird way, kind of, and he got stuck, and he was super close to getting there, but he didn't get to escape. And then Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, they were Sioux. Okay, so that was Western development. Now let's talk about industrialization. And this was kind of a result of Western, all three of these different things we're talking about. You can tell when it's something different when the slide color changes. Now it's yellow. And the next one is an effect of the last one. So this is also called the Gilded Age. So let's talk about some common and preferred stock. So stock, well, what was that? Well, is, because so is this. Investors invested into this to make money and get control of companies. But which one would they use? I mean, it's not like it was just cut and dry. It was more complicated than this, but in simpler terms, they could have common or preferred stock. And if they wanted common, that would be for a long-term use. If they wanted to control a company, they need a vote, and it doesn't guarantee a profit. So I like to say maybe more money, but wait. Preferred is short-term. It's basically the opposite of the other one. Short-term, you can get a one-time job, doesn't require a vote, guarantees profit, money right away. So it's like, okay, so we'll give you money and you can get this one-time thing, but common is like, you want to control the whole company? Well, let's see if you can actually get some profit. So the industrialists, they invested into this stock, and it was successful for these people. Vanderbilt, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Morgan, and they had 4 different companies. Well, industries. There was railroads for Vanderbilt railroads, Vanderbilt. Then Carnegie had steel, and Rockefeller had oil, and then Morgan had banking. And oh yeah, if you see that thing that says Clouseau, I kind of thought that guy looked like Steve Martin in the movie Pink Panther. But that, if you don't know what that is, just forget that. And Carnegie and some of the other ones, they had it's kind of hard for me to say it, philanthropy, if that's how you say it. PH starts with a PH. And that was when they used money to do something that was beneficial, such as like helping the poor, or investing into libraries, which is what Carnegie did. And he wrote a book called Wealth to defend his position. And we'll look at Robert Barron's Captains of Industry in a minute. So American ideologies that led to industrialization. So we were able to get to this place of power through some of these things that we've had since we got independent. So there's capitalism, and that's when you have land, labor, and capital as means of how the country runs. So it's not like, oh, government owns everything, people have no say. It's like that. So then laissez-faire, it's not always been laissez-faire, but it shifted more to laissez-faire since the Civil War, with little government control. And Adam Smith liked this. So it's like, okay, the government's not going to control what you do. You just do what you do. But this becomes a problem, as we'll see, because then that allows for corruption because the government can't control it. Then supply and demand as a system of how things work. And yeah, that's a picture from Tom Ritchie, very helpful YouTube channel, of how he shows laissez-faire, no hand on the government, or no government hand on the economy. What about some developments of the US economy? Well, here's some things that some of the presidents did, or things that happened that helped for industrialization. So for Andrew Jackson, that's that picture of him with star sunglasses, he had some tariffs. They were beneficial to setting up the economy in some cases. For Thomas Jefferson, he had constitutional methods, and his methods allowed for some stability because he didn't just do anything without thinking. There was manifest destiny. So like I said, when the slides were blue for the other part of this video. And then immigration, there was Chinese immigrants, but there was also some European ones that we'll talk about. Wars, Civil War, obviously, that led to the diminishment of, well, not completely, obviously, but sectionalism was a kind of a problem, and it was fixed a little bit by the ending of that war. And then manufacturing systems and innovations like cotton gin, I mean, that was way back, but there's lots of different things like that with the steam engine and railroads. And then banks. Remember that we had the national banks. Most successful industry. Now, this is just a biased thing, but I think it was the railroad industry because it involved all the other ones. So Vanderbilt, he may have been the most successful one because he needed steel, he needed oil, he needed banking, and he needed gold. Essay tip. Here's just one thing, just a general thing. You might, when you're looking at a question, you might want to just think of general concepts So if you see, oh, like what were the causes of industrialization, you might think of just some random thing like successful economy. Okay, that's probably too general for what you're trying to do, but then connect it to specific concepts. So like how I'm telling you all these specific things, use them and be specific. So for example, if there was a question about capitalism, you could say capital. Okay, that's pretty general. Get more specific, man-made goods, more specific technologies, and then very specific actual terms, cotton gin railroads, etc. All right, now we just had industrialization. What happened as a result of it? Because of the scandalous industrial techniques, probably a result of no laissez-faire, or yes laissez-faire, no government control, a backlash resulted from two primary groups, farmers and laborers, organized labor. These people are they consider industrialists to be robber barons. So I didn't really explain that much, but robber barons means that they think that they're corrupt. The industrialists, they think they're corrupt, and then captains of industries when people think that the industrialists were very beneficial to the development of the U.S. as an industrial power, which in some cases that might be the case, because I mean, how else could we be so successful in the world wars? There was even a 1953 essay about that, where they were talking about, well, they did use they used corrupt techniques, but it did get us to where we needed to be. And if it wasn't for them, maybe we wouldn't have won the world wars. And obviously that would have been bad, especially for the second one. Laissez-faire issue. So after the crises before the Civil War, many decided that laissez-faire was a good idea. But some changed their minds after the industrialization because industrialist actions and markets were not regulated. This means they could do whatever they want, and there wasn't a law against that yet. So don't we have the progressive era coming soon? Yes. So then some of that gets fixed a little bit. Main differences. So mad about differences. So like I said, farmers and the laborers, they were the main people that were mad, but they had different things that they were mad about. So the farmers, more of them were out west, and the laborers, they were more in the northeast. So we have the differences. Farmers did not like overproduction of goods because that means inflation. So, great, the money's not worth anything, kind of like that with the greenbacks. And gold standard currency out, well, that's later on in this list. There was rebates and price discrimination. That's basically like, oh, well, whoever's the best buyer will make it cheaper for you. And that gives the industrialists more profit, but it makes the farmers mad because they can't even be the best buyers because they don't have a lot of money. Freight costs, same thing. I already said gold standard, that was a different currency standard, and it was not beneficial to the farmers at all. It caused them to be in debt. Like I said, debts and then interest rates. The organized laborers, they didn't like the wages. They didn't get paid enough hours, too many hours, conditions, bad, immigration. They didn't like immigration because then that caused competition. That means not enough jobs, too many people. Child labor, they didn't like that. Company town issues, there was just towns that were completely run by these industries, and they didn't get to do anything about it. So the industrialists were kind of mad about this because basically they wanted less hours but paid more, and that doesn't really go together. Both say stupid laissez-faire. They don't like that. That's why I put an X over that Tom Ritchie picture, because they're like, that's bad because that means they can be corrupt and they can do whatever they want. Resistance. So what did they do about it? They didn't just sit there. The farmers, well, they had the Grangers, and the Grangers, they made some Granger laws to regulate railroad costs. So they were just farmers that got together and they're like, this is bad, so let's do some things. And that's what they did. but the Wabash case ends this. There was a Supreme Court case, and it was like, can't have those laws anymore. Populist Party, that was a third party. So there was Republican, Democrat, also populist, and that eventually just fizzled out, but it became part of the Democrat principles. And this basically, that was just, they got some more power, and their ideas were expressed more, along with the Omaha platform and ideas. That was basically, the Omaha platform was what they wanted, which, like I said, what they didn't want. So opposite of those things. Organized labor, there was two main groups. Knights of Labor, they were more violent. They're like, let's throw a bomb at some police officers right there. They threw a bomb. Who knows where they even got that bomb, but they threw it at people, and they threw it at some officers, and that was bad for them. The Knights of Labor were less successful than the next one, because they were like, oh, these people are terrible. So a lot of membership went down because of that. And then there was American Federation of Labor, and they didn't even really care as much about the civil principles of it. They were just like about the economics, and they were less violent and more successful. Blame. Who did they blame for the problems? Farmers. They say national and local government, because of the laissez-faire. They're like not being involved. They didn't like the banks, industrialists, especially monopolies and railroads. Organized labor, they didn't like their employers. They didn't like immigrants, like some know-nothings. They didn't like the government, and they didn't like industrialists either. Action differences. Farmers, they had some lawmaking attempts, state legislations. Organized labor, they had some strikes and violence. Not always, but like in that picture, crazy things going on. Well, do good on your test. So hopefully this helped with your knowledge on these chapters in this section of the course. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.